I didn't even notice the second sun at first. No one did, not really. It rose so softly, almost shy, tucked behind the haze of dawn like a trick of the light. I remember standing at the bus stop, rubbing sleep from my eyes. There it was, pale, delicate, just above the horizon to the east, maybe 15 degrees off from where the real sun was rising. It looked like a ghost sun, a reflection on a dirty window, a mirage drifting on the edge of my vision. But the real sun came up strong and gold, and the world went on. Kids shuffled past with backpacks and earbuds. The old man in the brown jacket coughed into his scarf, and I told myself not to be weird. Who the hell would believe me if I said I saw two suns? At the office, nobody mentioned it. The sky outside the windows looked normal, maybe a bit too bright, but who cared? In the break room, someone joked about solar flares. Another guy blamed it on chemtrails. Nobody even looked outside to check. By lunch, it was gone, or maybe hidden. One sun, that's all. I should have let it go. I didn't. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop replaying the scene at the bus stop. I found myself scrolling deep into forums, weather anomalies, atmospheric reflections, phantom suns from ice crystals. But the photos didn't match. What I'd seen felt real. Solid. When I finally slept, I dreamed about it, a pale, trembling sun flickering above my house, peeking through my window, searing the back of my eyes. The next morning, my neighbor Carl knocked on my door. He never talks to me, but that day he was pale, sweating. "You seen it?" he whispered, like he was afraid of being overheard. I didn't have to ask what he meant. "The sun," I said. He nodded. "It's back." I stepped outside with him. The street was quiet. The normal sun hadn't risen yet, but there it was, the second one. Higher this time, brighter, pulsing like it was breathing. It was wrong. It made my skin crawl. "It watches," Carl said. He wouldn't look at me. "It's looking for something." Before I could ask him what he meant, his eyes rolled back. He collapsed on my porch, stiff as a corpse but breathing shallow. I called 911, of course. They came. They strapped him to a stretcher. They didn't look at the second sun. They didn't even look up. When I pointed, they just told me I was stressed. Overworked. Hallucinating, maybe. They left me there with the sunrise burning holes through the clouds, and the second sun hanging above it, a mocking twin. That night, I noticed my phone didn't work right. Every time I tried to take a picture of the second sun, the screen glitched, lines of static, a black dot where the light should be. I went online. Reddit was full of posts. "Is anyone seeing this? We have two suns now?" But every post vanished within minutes. Threads gone. Users deleted. It was like the whole internet was gaslighting itself. By the third day, I knew I couldn't just stay home. Something was happening, and no one was talking about it. So I packed a bag, filled my tank, and headed out of the city at dawn. That was when I realized it was following me. I drove for hours that first day, pretending I had a plan. The interstate unraveled in front of me like an endless gray ribbon. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a convoy of cars, anything to prove I wasn't alone in this. But the road stayed empty. Only the second sun stayed with me. At first, I told myself it was in my head. Some optical trick, a lens flare through the windshield. But when I pulled off at a dusty gas station somewhere outside Kingston, I saw an old woman standing by the ice machine, her eyes locked on the sky. She didn't blink when I stepped out. She didn't speak when I asked if she saw it too. She just lifted a trembling finger toward the twin suns overhead, one bold and golden, the other pale and pulsing. Then she crossed herself 3 times, turned away, and went back inside. I didn't buy anything. I didn't want to talk to the cashier. I got back in the car and drove until my eyes stung from the brightness. By sunset, I'd reached the edge of a state park. I found a gravel pull-off and parked, killed the engine. It was quiet there, too quiet. Birds weren't singing. Crickets weren't chirping. It felt like the world was holding its breath. And above the tree line, I could still see it, the second sun, fainter now but undeniably there, shimmering like an eye that wouldn't shut. I tried calling my sister. I needed to hear a voice, any voice. The call didn't connect. My phone pulsed with notifications for a moment, dozens of missed calls, texts that were just blank bubbles. When I tapped on them, they vanished. And then the screen died completely. No signal. No power. Nothing but my reflection staring back at me, lit by that other sun. I must have dozed off at some point because when I opened my eyes, it was pitch black outside. The normal sun was gone, of course. But in its place, there it was, a dim sphere hovering where the moon should have been. Not a star. Not the moon. The second sun, dull and pale, shedding just enough light to paint the trees in ghost colors. I stumbled out of the car. My head felt stuffed with static. Somewhere in the darkness, branches cracked. Leaves rustled. I thought it might be a deer, but then I heard whispers. A chorus of voices I couldn't place. Male, female, young, old, they all spoke at once, a strange harmony that made my teeth ache. I pressed my hands to my ears. The whispers didn't stop. They pressed inside my skull. When I finally screamed, it was like turning off a switch. Silence. The second sun flared bright for a heartbeat, then dimmed again, as if acknowledging me. Back in the car, I locked the doors and lay awake until dawn. My eyes stung. I couldn't stop staring at it. It was closer now. Or maybe I was closer to it. Either way, I felt watched. I felt wanted. Morning came with no birdsong, no traffic. I turned the key. The engine coughed to life. My phone stayed dead, but the radio flickered on. At first it was just static, but then, through the white noise, I heard my own name. Not once, but over and over, different voices saying it, layering over each other like a broken record. I punched the power button, but the voice bled through. The second sun hung low on the horizon ahead of me. I had no choice but to drive toward it. Hours passed in a blur. Trees turned to dry fields. Fields turned to a strip of dying suburbia. I pulled into a strip mall lot. Half the stores were boarded up. An old payphone stood crooked by the curb, rusted but somehow intact. I got out, walked to it, lifted the receiver out of sheer desperation. Before I could dial anything, a voice rasped through the line. You shouldn't have looked at it. I dropped the receiver. It swung wildly, banging against the metal box. The line stayed open, faint breathing on the other end. When I turned around, I saw them, 3 people standing in the empty parking lot. They wore regular clothes, jeans, hoodies, old jackets, but their eyes were wide, unblinking, reflecting the second sun like mirrors. One of them stepped forward. It knows you now, she said. Her voice was too flat, too calm. She raised her hand and pointed past me. I turned. There it was, hovering right above the strip mall, brighter than ever, a white-hot hole in the sky that hummed like an open wound. I ran. I didn't remember how I made it back to the car. My chest burned, my throat raw from gasping. When I slammed the door shut, the parking lot was empty again. No pale-eyed strangers, no sign of the second sun hanging so close I could almost reach out and touch it. But I could feel it, a weight in the sky, pressing down, humming just beyond hearing. I turned the key. The car sputtered and whined, like it didn't want to leave. Then the engine caught. I didn't care where I was going. I just drove. Mile after mile, the highway unspooled through towns that felt wrong. Houses with curtains drawn tight in the middle of the day. Playgrounds abandoned, swings creaking in the wind. Once, I passed a farm where a dozen cows stood in a perfect circle, all facing the same point in the sky. I didn't stop. Not even for gas. My tank was nearly empty, but somehow the needle stayed hovering just above the. Every few miles, I thought I glimpsed other cars pulled off to the side, drivers leaning against their hoods, necks craned back, eyes glazed over in awe or terror. Sometimes they waved. Sometimes they didn't even notice me. I kept my eyes forward. I couldn't help it, though. Every so often, my gaze would flick to the rearview mirror. It was always there. The second sun. Closer now. Bigger. When dusk came, the sky went from bruised purple to a weird, electric red. I pulled into a roadside motel, the neon sign buzzing like a nest of angry wasps. Vacancy flickered on and off, almost in time with my heartbeat. The clerk didn't ask my name. He barely looked at me as he handed over a key. Room 9, he said monotone. His eyes were dull, glassy. Don't open the curtains after dark. I asked him why, but he just shrugged, like he didn't understand the question. When I got to the room, I locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob for good measure. I tried to turn on the TV, static. I tried the phone, dead. So I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the curtains. Outside, I could see the glow seeping through the thin fabric. A pale, pulsing light that didn't belong to any street lamp. I told myself I wouldn't look. I lasted maybe an hour. I got up, heart hammering, and peeled back the corner of the curtain just enough to see. The second sun floated above the motel sign. Not in the sky. Above the parking lot, close enough that the cars were bathed in its cold, white glow. Shapes moved beneath it. Shadows that didn't match anything around them. Tall, spindly things that flickered and bled into each other like watercolors in the rain. One of them turned. I swear it saw me. I stumbled back, tripped over the chair. The lamp flickered and died. I sat in the darkness, covering my mouth to muffle the sound of my breathing. For hours, I didn't move. When dawn finally came, the light changed, softer, warmer, like a regular sunrise. But the second sun stayed. At checkout, the clerk was gone. The lobby was empty, the door propped open like someone left in a hurry. I didn't leave my key. I just got back in the car and drove. No more highways. I stuck to back roads, winding through fields that smelled like rain and rot. Radio dead, phone dead, my mind buzzing with static I couldn't shake. Every mile, the second sun drifted closer, like it was riding shotgun just behind the clouds. I caught glimpses of it in puddles, in rearview mirrors, even reflected in my own eyes when I looked too long in the visor mirror. By the time I reached the next town, I felt like I hadn't slept in years. The sign read, "Welcome to Ellers Creek." Population scratched out. The main street was empty, storefronts shuttered, cars abandoned mid-turn, doors left swinging in the breeze. I pulled over, killed the engine. The second sun stared down at me like a question I didn't know how to answer. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. A child, no more than 8 or 9, stood in the road, barefoot, wearing pajamas that looked 2 sizes too small. He smiled at me. His eyes reflected the second sun, tiny white sparks dancing in his pupils. "Are you here to see it too?" he asked. My mouth was dry. "See what?" He pointed up. "It wants you to come closer." I didn't want to follow the kid. Every cell in my body screamed at me to get back in the car, drive until the tank ran dry, and keep going on foot if I had to. But my feet moved on their own, crunching over broken glass and scattered gravel as I trailed behind him. He walked barefoot down the middle of Main Street, weaving around abandoned cars and toppled trash bins. He didn't shiver, even though the early morning air bit at my skin. Every so often, he'd glance over his shoulder and smile. That same empty, glassy smile I'd seen on Carl, the gas station woman, the clerk. They were all connected, I realized. Not by choice. By something else. We turned down a narrow alley behind a laundromat. The kid stopped at a chain-link fence and ducked through a hole in the wire. On the other side was an empty lot, cracked asphalt, weeds pushing up through the splits. And in the center of it, a ring of people knelt in the dirt. 10, maybe 12 of them, all ages, shapes, clothes hanging loose like they'd forgotten how to dress. They were staring straight up, eyes wide and white, lips moving in a silent chant. Above them, the second sun pulsed like a heartbeat. The kid dropped to his knees and joined them. He didn't look back at me. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't listen. So I stepped forward, closer to the circle, close enough to see that their pupils weren't normal. They were like tiny mirrors, reflecting the second sun so perfectly that it felt like looking into an infinite tunnel of light. The air tasted metallic. My ears rang. The light flickered, and for a second, I swear I wasn't looking at the sun at all, but at something behind it. A shape, shifting and coiling, too big to fit inside my head. When I blinked, it was gone. One of the kneeling people turned to me. An old woman with stringy white hair, eyes shining like silver coins. "It's hungry," she whispered. I stumbled back. The others didn't react, they just kept whispering to the sky. A tremor ran through the ground, gentle at first, then stronger. The cracked asphalt split wider. From the center of the circle, a shaft of pale light shot upward, connecting the people to the second sun like an umbilical cord. I don't remember running. I just remember the taste of blood in my mouth from biting my tongue, the slap of my shoes on concrete, the pounding in my chest so loud it drowned out the whispers. When I made it back to the main street, the town felt even emptier. Windows were dark. Cars sat frozen in intersections. But I wasn't alone. Figures watched me from doorways, half hidden, eyes glowing faintly with that same mirrored light. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just waited. I didn't get far before my vision blurred. I staggered into an old diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a neon sign that buzzed weakly overhead. Inside, it looked abandoned, but a single pot of coffee still steamed on the warmer behind the counter. I poured myself a cup with trembling hands. The coffee was bitter, almost metallic. I drank it anyway. When I glanced at the window, I saw my reflection. For a second, my eyes caught the light wrong, and there it was, the second sun, tiny and perfect, spinning in my pupils like a spider's egg. I slammed my fists on the counter. "What do you want from me?" I rasped, voice cracking. There was no answer, but the radio behind the counter fizzed to life, static at first, then a voice that sounded like mine, only deeper, slower, warped like an old tape. "You invited it." I stumbled back, knocking the cup to the floor. The voice didn't stop. You looked at it. You made it real. You let it see you. I grabbed the radio, yanked the plug, but the static voice bled out of the unplugged speaker. I bolted from the diner, heart jackhammering. Outside, the sky had turned a sickly, swirling green. The second sun swelled larger, close enough now that the heat made the street shimmer. I ran for my car, keys ready in my shaking hand, but the driver's side window was already cracked open. Inside, the kid from Ellers Creek sat in my passenger seat, bare feet dangling off the dash. He didn't look scared. He looked patient. "It's almost here," he said softly. Then he turned those mirror eyes on me, and for a heartbeat, I felt myself unravel, like my bones were made of paper, my thoughts pouring out through my teeth. I slammed the door shut, but it didn't matter. The second sun was right above us now, humming like a swarm of hornets. "Drive," the boy said. "It wants to meet you." So I did. I don't remember how long I drove with the boy in the passenger seat. Time twisted in the heat pouring down through the windshield. The real sun had vanished behind a curtain of swirling clouds, leaving only the second one, glaring and hungry. The road ahead blurred into a ribbon of melted asphalt. Trees along the shoulders wilted, branches hanging limp like they'd been drained of color. Every few miles, I saw more people by the roadside. They were kneeling, always kneeling, with their heads tilted back, eyes wide open to the burning sky. Some held their hands out, palms up like they were waiting for rain that would never come. They didn't flinch when I passed. They didn't blink. The boy hummed beside me, tapping his bare toes on the glove box like he was listening to some tune only he could hear. When I glanced over, he smiled, and I saw myself reflected in his eyes, or what was left of me. My face was pale, drawn tight over bone, eyes ringed with shadows. But there, behind my reflection, was that white sphere, the second sun, burning inside my pupils like a seed waiting to hatch. "It shows you," the boy said, voice barely above a whisper. "You looked when no one else did." I wanted to tell him to shut up, to get out, but my tongue felt heavy, pinned down by the static crawling through my brain. The radio flickered to life again, crackling with broken voices, my voice, Carl's voice, the old woman from the gas station, the clerk at the motel. All of them speaking at once, layered over each other in a chorus of static and words I couldn't quite make out. Then, clear as a bell, I heard, "Stop here." I slammed on the brakes. The car shuddered to a stop on the shoulder of a narrow, winding road that cut through a dying pine forest. The boy opened his door and slid out, bare feet crunching on pine needles. I didn't want to follow him, but my legs moved on their own. We pushed through the trees, branches whipping at my face. The air was thick, electric, the taste of metal on my tongue, my skin prickling as if thousands of tiny insects were burrowing under it. Ahead, the forest opened into a clearing. A circle scorched black into the earth, as wide as a football field. In the center, the second sun hovered just above the ground. Not in the sky anymore, but low enough that its light turned the dirt to glassy slag. Around the edges of the clearing, people stood shoulder to shoulder, all facing inward. Dozens of them. The old woman, Carl, the gas station clerk, the people from the strip mall lot, the kneeling kid from Ellers Creek. Their eyes glowed silver white, each one a tiny mirror reflecting the sphere. The boy stepped into the circle of burned earth. He turned to me and reached out his hand. "Come on," he said, like he was inviting me to sit by a campfire. When I stepped over the edge, the world changed. The static in my head went silent. The air grew still, almost heavy, pressing down on my shoulders like the deepest part of the ocean. The second sun pulsed, once, twice, and then split open like an egg. Inside it wasn't light. It was dark, a vast, yawning pit of shifting shadows that twisted into shapes my mind fought to hold on to. I saw faces. Some were mine, cracked and stretched like wax in the sun. Some I didn't recognize, but they all wore the same expression, relief. The ground trembled under my feet. I wanted to run. My legs wouldn't move. The boy stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin, not warm like a bonfire, but sharp and dry, like standing in front of an open furnace. "It was always hungry," he said. His voice wasn't a child's voice anymore. It was older, deeper, echoing from somewhere behind the trees, the sky, my own skull. I tried to scream when he touched my chest. There was no sound. Only the world folding in on itself, the second sun collapsing into my ribs like it belonged there all along. When I opened my eyes, I was standing alone in the clearing. No people, no boy, no second sun. Above me, The sky was dull gray, the normal sun hidden behind clouds. Birds called out in the trees. A breeze rustled the pines. Everything felt normal. I stumbled back to the road, found my car parked exactly where I'd left it. The tank was full. The radio was dead silent. I drove home. Now, at night, I stand at my window and stare at the sky. No one talks about it anymore, if they ever did. The second sun is gone, but sometimes, when I look just right, I see a flicker of it behind my reflection. A pale, watchful eye, waiting. And when I close my eyes, I feel it, deep inside my chest, warm and humming. It didn't go away. It just came home with me.